Okay, now let's get this started. Cool. Okay, off and rolling. If I can too, I'd like to thank Cameron for putting all this together, and then everyone who's out there participating in this today too. I hope that I have some really good information for you to really start on or make your lawn better or make it more what you're looking for. Just so we're Cameron did send out the information sheets, I believe PDFs of natural yard care, which is really a lot of the basics of what the natural lawn care program is based on. Also, building healthy soils, right plant, right place, smart irrigation, thinking twice before using any pesticides, and then number 5 on the natural yard care program is natural lawn care. So there's some steps in the natural yard care booklet about natural lawn care, and then we also can send you the natural lawn care pamphlet, which has a really good brochure going over some of the same things I'm talking about today, but also other resources for you and stuff. And same with this one, tons of resources on the back. So to continue on your learning process. So, and then the third one is the growing healthy soils. And I'll just touch a little bit on that, but it's really, really important that soils are really what we're focusing in on to have good plant material growing. And again, that's the first step of the natural yard care series is healthy soils, whatever we can to promote healthy soils. So let's roll right into the natural lawn care program then. And the reason that we're talking today, like Cameron said, that, you know, a lot of things are impacting our environment, but a lot of studies have shown that out of all of our gardening practices, lawns have the biggest impact of everything that we do in our gardening. So to try to achieve a certain look in our lawns and try to keep it and maintain this look and this color and everything, you use a lot of irrigation on it. We use a lot of products, including fertilizers and stuff like that, and I'll talk about those too. But what we're finding is that these combinations can lead to water runoff into our storm drains, and then again, like Cameron mentioned, everything ending up into the lowest body to water, river, tributary, pond, lake, whatever it is. It's run off through the stormwater system. So what we're going to talk about today is how to have a really nice lawn with minimal impact on our environment. And what we found is if we're working with Mother Nature, we really can have a better lawn in the long run, and that's what we're looking for. And there's really different thoughts on lawn care, right? I mean, you have some very highly intensive mowing going on here and stuff, and then the photo on the right where it's like completely natural, not doing anything and such. And really what we're trying to go for is something that's in the middle, like this lawn, where it's green, it's healthy, it's vigorous growing, it's lush, and because the plant material is grown at a certain height and taken care of correctly, really a lawn like this becomes your #1 weed control and your #1 moss control, because we want to use Mother Nature to combat those little critters in trying to move in on our properties with a tenacious plant, and that's what grass plants are when they're grown correctly and taken care of correctly. So that's what we'll be talking about today. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is healthy soils are key for great lawns. Then the 6 steps of natural lawn care, which is in both those publications. And really the last step of natural lawn care is that if we're doing everything we think is right and the lawn still isn't successful, or we're still having weed problems, we're still having moss problems, it might be where that lawn is being grown in the wrong place. So now we have the wrong plant growing in the wrong place. And if lawn isn't happy and it isn't successful, then it's really a challenge to not keep out all those other pests that we don't like in there, weeds, moss, and such. So the last step is that if it's done, all those steps are done and it's still not happy with it, maybe we need to rethink those lawn areas and grow something else there that is going to be more successful and a better garden for us in the future. Okay. But again, healthy soils are key. First step of natural yard care is building healthy soils. And really everything I'm going to talk to you about today, these cultural practices, products that we're adding, really are enhancing the soil structure, enhancing the soil microbial activity, and in turn having better soils, which means that we have better plants on top, and that's what we're looking for. Okay, and so the whole key for most healthy soils is an annual renewal of organic matter. Mother Nature in the forest has this, has products coming down all the time: needles, leaves, flowers, whatever debris coming off of these plants is allowed to lay on the ground, and then Mother Nature takes that and composts it on the ground and turns it into really nice soils. Takes a long time, but we have the ability to enhance our soil structures by adding organic matter like compost like this, deep, dark, rich organic matter, which really enhances the soil profile, and again, our plants explode on top because of it. And this is a visual look of what good compost and soil structure can do. This is at the Center for Urban Horticulture they had at the University of Washington, and they were doing tests for stormwater runoff. And what they did is they planted a lawn on the top there, which is just grown on our glacier till. And usually our challenge in our urban environments is that when they take all the good soils away, we don't replace it with a lot of good soil. And so after a while, the lawn's just like this, becomes yellow. It peaks, it's peeking out. It's got moss growing in it, it has weeds growing in it. It just is not a healthy lawn. Where the lawn on the bottom is actually, the only difference between this lawn and the lawn up here is that they amended the soil, which means that they added compost to the soil and mixed them all together, then graded it out, and then planted lawn on top. And look how healthy this lawn is. Better color, thicker, vigorous growing. That's what we're looking for our lawns. And what they have found is that even because this was a stormwater runoff test, they put water at the top and they watched it move to the bottom and then collected it on the bottom. And they found that just by having a better lawn, just by having a healthier and happier lawn, they reduced stormwater runoff coming off of this lawn by 50% immediately, because the water running from the top is allowed to slow down, it's allowed to spread out, and then it's allowed to sink into the existing soils and stuff. So this is what we're trying to promote, is that we're not only going to be able to have a better environmental benefit with a better lawn, but have a better looking and a better maintained lawn. So organic matter and taking care of our soils is a whole key, and I'll kind of touch on that several times while we're talking about how to take care of our lawn today. Okay, so here's the 6 steps of natural lawn care that we'll go into. A lot of these probably most people are already doing, mowing, fertilizing, watering. But we're probably going to try to tweak it a little bit just so that we can maximize the benefits of doing all these correctly. So the first step is probably the easiest, it's mowing. So we want to mow high, mow a little more regularly, and leave clippings as much as possible, or mulch mow as much as possible. And really, mowing is probably like the easiest, but also sometimes the biggest pain. And I was driving through Bellevue one day and I saw this written on a garage door, someone telling the other person in the household to do a chore by writing it on the garage. And so it doesn't matter if you're the person who is in charge of mowing the lawn, or you're the person who is in charge of the person who's in charge of mowing the lawn, which I believe is most the wives. The easiest thing that most people can do for a better lawn is to sharpen the blade. Quick and easy. You can get a new blade from an equipment store that you buy your mowers from, and they just have it where you can just replace it. And most mower blades might be $20, $30, $35, or you can sharpen it by those same companies can just put it on a sharpener. But really, to maintain a sharp blade, at least once or twice a year getting it sharpened, or replace the blade at least once a year, means that we have a better cut and a better lawn immediately. And I have seen lawns that have this yellow haze all over them, even after growing a little while. They just never look really good. And it's because mowing with a dull blade actually beats the turf grass, and so it gets frayed here at the tip and then just dries out and dies off. Where if it's a sharp blade, and we're not talking sharp like razor blade sharp, we're talking sharp enough just to be able to cut the grass blade instead of beat it. And you can see on the other side here, with just where it's cut off nicely, is that the lawn stays greener and looks better already. A sharp blade makes a huge difference, and you'll see immediately difference if you haven't replaced or sharpened your blade in a while. So this little frayed edge gets all kind of, when it dies off, it just has this yellow raggedy look at it, and that's what you see on the lawn. So sharpen your blade and you'll have a better lawn immediately, okay? And also, what I recommend with the mowers is raise your mower up to the highest level that you can, and mow it a couple times with that. Measure it, just like doing this, to see where that mowing height is, and then adjust it accordingly. But we'd like to see the lawns mowed at 2.5 to 3 inches to be a happier lawn around here. And a lot of people, that might seem a little shaggy at first, but once you start mowing at this height, especially with a sharp blade, you will notice the lawn being healthier, and there's a couple of reasons for this. One thing also to understand is that when we remove the grass blades, we never want to cut off more than 1/3 of the height. So if you're going to mow it to 3 inches, you let it get up to about 4 inches and then cut it down. But you never want to let the lawn get out of control and then just try to cut it all the way down again, because it's not healthy for the lawn. So we call it the 1/3 rule. Never cut off more than 1/3 per mowing. Okay, and the reason is too is that the grass plant really, out of all plants, is unique. Unique in the fact that most plants, when they're growing, they put all their energy into their tips. So they're growing out like trees, shrubs, flowers, everything's getting larger and growing and stuff. Where in a grass plant, all the growing comes from this crown area right here, which is the transition area from the roots growing down and grass blades growing up, okay? And so this is where the growing is going on, and these grass blades are actually the plant's little photosynthesizing solar panels, okay? So if we cut these off in too much, the plant has to use reserves from its root system to try to regrow, which makes the plant less healthy. The plant wants to be growing and continually putting reserves down in its root system to be able to have a stronger plant. So if you see your lawn is green when you mow it and then it's yellow after you mow it, what you're doing is you are cutting down right to the crown area, which again, that means the plant has to use energy that it's stored, that it wants to keep in savings in order to grow up. Plants will do this. Grass is pretty tough, but if it's continually using its reserves, then you're going to have big problems in the long run, because the plant won't be able to grow through that on a long-term basis. So a lot of people mow it down this height to this height because they say that it's easier to take care of because they don't have to mow as much, but really that's the wrong attitude. You want to mow your lawn. The lawn likes to be mowed. It needs to be mowed at the correct height, 2.5 to 3 inches, okay? And they've shown too that even at shorter heights, we don't have as good of a root system. We don't have as deep as a root system. But if we mow taller and we get a better root system, grass plants, the bunch grass plants, and we grow some of those here with the fescues, they actually will send out side shoots and thicken up itself by tillering, we call it. So by mowing correctly, the plant's happy, it's got a good root system, it will start sending out these side shoots and thickening up itself immediately. So you'll have a better lawn because it's naturally thickening itself up, which is our #1 competitor again against weeds and moss, is having a thick, tenacious lawn. You don't want to have a bunch of bare spots because critters move into that. So you mow taller, you have a better root system, and you thicken it up. So really, the basics are sharp blade, mow a little taller, have a happier plant. You will notice a difference in a really short amount of time on how better your lawn is looking. And again, they've shown you can mow low, you have a root system, but if it takes energy from that root system for the plant to grow out of that when it's mowed too low. If we mow higher, we have this root system, but it's able to recover from this injury, which is mowing. It is an injury. It's able to recover from it, and it has a happier, healthier root system, which means it's a better plant moving on. So first step is mowing a little taller, which means we might have to mow a little more often too in our spring and summer, because we don't want it to get too tall, okay? And that's the thing too, we get a spring surge. So don't let the lawn get too tall, and then when you have to take down more than that third, it really is damaging the plant's ability to be successful. So don't let it get too tall, don't mow it too short. Okay? And again, mulching blades, if we can, is one of the best things you can do to renew the organic matter on your soil by just leaving the grass clippings. And you can see right here, this is like regular grass clippings from just a one-cut edge, and that's usually from most traditional mowers. They have the one edge on both sides here. As it goes around and around, it cuts it one time and usually puts it into a bag that we remove from that. But with the new mulching blades, they have the ability to cut it multiple times and turn it into these smaller pieces, which then get blown down onto the soil surface, and you won't even know they're there. So it's pretty amazing on how it cuts it once, and because of these additional cutting edges, it makes it into very small pieces that then are blown down onto the soil surface. You won't even know you're leaving clippings, but by leaving the clippings, you're doing the first step of natural yard care, your soil building, because you're adding organic matter every time you mow, but you're also adding nitrogen, because the grass clippings, the green part is nitrogen, so every time you mow and leave the clippings, you're actually giving your lawn a slow release nitrogen fertilizer the way that it likes it. So mulching is really the best way you can do it if you have that ability. Now, if you have a traditional mower, you can go to the company that made it, and ask them for a mulching kit, which means they'll give you a mulching blade and maybe even a plug to put in the back so that it keeps those clippings in the deck of the mower and stuff. So a lot of mowers can be converted to a mulching mower pretty inexpensively. But again, we get this spring surge in springtime around here where the plants are really happy and growing. We grow cool season grasses around here. So that means we get this growth in springtime and then in the growth in the fall time. In summertime, the lawns kind of go into a slower growth period. So for us, mowing means we're going to have to mow a little more often in spring, a little more often in fall, not so much in the summertime. And when we weren't working here for the 6 weeks a while back, and I was at home all the time, I was mowing my lawn because it was growing every 4 to 5 days, and it really makes a huge difference on not letting it go too much taller and be able to get those clippings on the grass pretty easily. So springtime, fall time might be 5-day mowings. In summertime, you might be able to go to 10 to 14 days, but depends on how well the lawn's growing. But we do have the differences in spring and fall that you want to keep up on. Okay, so mowing again is mowing a little higher, mowing a little more regularly, leave the clippings as much as possible. And with a sharp blade, you'll be amazed how your lawn's looking. The second one is how we feed the plants, because lawns like to have a fertilizer, but they want it with a slow release or a natural fertilizer. They don't want a lot of nitrogen at once. So always look for organic on the bag or slow release, but really if you can get organic, that's what we're looking for. Even if you can get OMRI certified, even another level of saying that's a quality product that you're putting out there. These products are made with products that feed the soil, which in turn feed the plants, okay? And that's what we're looking for. We just don't want straight nitrogen to the plant. We want it to take care of the soils because then the soils take care of our plants. So for lawn fertilizers, you always, or on any fertilizer, they have 3 numbers here. Nitrogen's the first, phosphorus is the second, potassium is the third. So it's NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. For all-purpose or well-rounded fertilizers for fruits, vegetables, flowers, roses, these numbers will probably be pretty close to the same. But for a lawn fertilizer, we really want this second number to be a 0 or a 1. We don't want to see much phosphorus in the lawn fertilizers because that's what's being washed into our waterways, and that's where we're seeing the algae blooms. So for lawn fertilizers, you'll probably see the fertilizer being like an 8-1-2 or something like that. So look for lawn fertilizers only, not all-purpose fertilizers when we're doing our lawn fertilizer. It didn't really get the best results. And I always recommend go to a local nursery. I mean, in Shoreline, we've got Swanson's, we've got Sky. There's some quality nurseries out there that talk to those folks, and they will set you up on really good products for your lawn. They'll do the best for you. So that's the best place to go. And it doesn't matter what kind of product you're putting down. The main key is that never letting any of that product just sit on hard surfaces, patios, driveways, sidewalks, whatever it is. That product needs to be swept or blown onto the soil surface so that it can start doing its work instead of just being washed off into the stormwater systems. So even organic fertilizers left on sidewalks and washed off into the storm systems is not good for our environment. So everything has to be blown, swept onto the soil surface, get off of that hard surface. And then also read the instructions for fertilizers and never apply more than what they say. We recommend putting down maybe a half or 3/4 the amount they recommend. See how the lawn reacts. If you feel like to put a little bit more down, you do, but you never put twice as much down or more thinking that you're trying to jumpstart the lawn. Less is better in smaller increments is what you're trying to go for. And then kind of watch how you're fertilizing. There's 2 types of spreaders that we have that we can fertilize lawns with. One is a broadcast. That means that the fertilizer falls through a hole, hits a paddle that's turning, and it throws it out to a pattern of like 3 or 4 feet. And then there's drop spreaders, which means that the fertilizer drops straight down from the hopper where it's being held and goes straight down the ground. It doesn't get thrown out. So you can see that this person thought they had a broadcast spreader, so they thought that they were going to be throwing it out to patterns like this, but it was a drop spreader just going straight down. So you can see the fertilizer all the way around, but the rest of the lawn is struggling because it doesn't have access to that fertilizer. So know what you're using, know how to use it, read the instructions to really do it right, okay? And then really the #1 message from how we take care of our plants is no more weed and feed products. Please, 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 no more weed and feed products. No more combo products, we call them, which is either weed and feed, which is a fertilizer plus an herbicide to kill weeds. And then also there's like moss control plus fertilizers. No, we just want to separate those acts. No more of these products, because the study that they did where they found 23 different pesticides in our waterways, the top 4 that were found in every waterway we have around here were all the weed and feed products. So all those products are not being used by the plants, not being used by the soils, and they're being washed off in our stormwater systems, causing huge problems. So please, no more weed and feed products. And then even though these might be the cutest little critters in the whole world, what comes out the back end is not an organic fertilizer. It's not even something you can put into yard waste to be composted. It needs to go into solid waste. Bag it up, put it in the solid waste or the regular garbage to be taken away and taken care of. Our composting facilities don't have the ability to compost what's in dog and cat poos, and don't dig a hole and put it in your yard or anything like that. We don't have the ability to deal with it either. There's some nasty little bacteria and stuff like that that come off of pet waste that needs to be treated as solid waste, cleaned up, put into the regular garbage. And then we recommend lime for applications for lawns by adding calcium and magnesium. We replenish mineralization into the soils, but it also helps with soil pH, which can be a big deal. So to put it down, to get that calcium and magnesium down, makes a huge difference for us, and I'll show you a little bit more about that here in a second. And a reason that pH makes a big difference is that our soils around here in the Pacific Northwest, if they get down lower than like this 6.5, then we start seeing some of the nutrients that are available or that are in the soils not available for plant use. Once the pH gets to a favorable range, all those minerals become available for plant use in abundance. So we don't have alkaline soils. We don't see anything over about 7, but we do see some soils down in the Pacific Northwest, 5, 5.5, which means all these minerals are unavailable through just how soil chemistry works. So for most people, if the lawn's not looking well, they put down fertilizers, but if it's a pH problem, those fertilizers, you can fertilize all the time and it won't be available. So let me show you a little video about liming, and then we'll be right back.
I got my soil test back, and my pH is below 6, and I know that that's not optimal. What can I do about it?
Well, you're correct that if anything below 6 can start causing some problems for us. The easiest thing to do is to add lime to help raise that pH. When the pH is too low, the nutrients actually become bound up in that soil profile, and by raising that pH up a little bit, nutrients become available and the plants can thrive because of it. You will get a big bang for your buck because lime is inexpensive and will make a huge difference. So we recommend lime every 3 years, or as indicated by the soil test, which is very important. So you want to test your soil to determine the amount of lime that you'll need, and that should come on the soil test.
And how often should I get my soil checked?
Well, you probably only have to get it tested every 3 or 4 years after this initial test. Some people might not want to get a soil test, and so we would recommend to them probably just applying some lime every 3 or 4 years just to make sure they're getting some calcium and magnesium down in that soil profile. In the Pacific Northwest, most soils are likely to have a pH that is too low. So the key for this is accurately measure the lawn size. A stride is 2 steps. If you have an irregularly shaped yard, try to square it off into rectangles as best you can. The soil test will recommend how many pounds of lime per 1,000 square feet to apply. Now we recommend too, do not ever apply more than 35 pounds per 1,000 square feet per application, and you only want to do a maximum of 2 applications of lime per year. In this case, the soil test recommends adding 140 pounds of lime. We would do 4 applications of 35 pounds per application. 1 application in the spring, 1 in the fall, another in the following spring, and the final application the next fall. This would reach the recommended 140 pound amount, and then we'd wait another 3 years before testing again.
I've seen a couple different types of lime. Which kind should I use?
Well, there's a couple different varieties that are available, powdered and pelletized. We recommend using a pelletized lime instead of using the powdered limes, because the powdered limes are very messy and they seem to blow all over the place. And really, just for your health, wear a mask when you're putting down any of these products just so you don't breathe in any of that dust. And then never use any fertilizer within 2 weeks of putting down a lime, or they inhibit each other's benefits of what they're trying to do. After you apply the lime, you want to water it in, and that actually will activate the product and help start remineralizing your soil. We recommend either applying it in spring or fall. Fall being the preferred time because they'll actually take those fall rains, help activate it and remineralize the soils. Okay, cool. So a couple things about the video. Again, soil test. If you haven't done it for a while, great thing to do. There's a really good one that's locally up in Burlington, simply soiltesting.com. For relatively, I think it's $10 or $15. It's not very much. They can give you a tremendous amount of information, but look them up and they can give you some good information on how to take a soil test also. So that you can see from that video that the pH was way low for them to have to put 35 pounds per application for 4 applications, try to raise it back up. I recommend if people can put about 10 pounds per 1,000 square feet per year just to remineralize and keep the pH in a reasonable range. You don't want to get into the roller coaster where it goes way low and then you try to bring it up and being very low. It takes a while for the pH to change. So to put the lime down in fall time or winter or late winter and then have those rains remineralize the soil and make that pH start raising so the lawn's ready to go in springtime is the best way to go. But again, just to kind of put a little bit down every year if you want to, just to kind of put that calcium and magnesium is a pretty good benefit. Okay, so number 1's mowing again. Second step's fertilizing. Third step is watering, which is a pretty important one now in the Pacific Northwest. And really, to be a really good water user, we have to be responsible, and that means knowing how much moisture is coming out of our irrigation system. So it doesn't matter what kind of a system you have, either hand watering or even automatic, to kind of know how much water comes out of it, to measure it so you understand what it takes to get 1 inch. And that's the number we're kind of trying to work with, is 1 inch of water comes out of your system. And so the easiest thing to do is to measure the system, is to run whatever sprinkler system you have for a certain amount of time, come back, measure the amount of water in that, and know that through some simple calculations, you can figure out how much 1 inch of water is. So you can see this was 1 inch of water. I did an oscillator and it took me 2.5 hours to get that 1 inch of water out of my oscillator. And I like oscillators because they go back and forth slowly, so it allows the water to sink in on one side while it's watering the other side. But there's different there's different watering systems. Like I said, the oscillator, which I like, is a slower one. If someone has automatic systems with pop-up heads like this, you might get 1 inch of water literally within a couple minutes, like if there's a small area of lawn and all these pop on at once. So it really, every lawn's different, every landscape's different. To understand what yours is what you have to do, and that becomes by measuring and run your irrigation system. And what we found too is that if we can water the lawn 1 day a week and put as much water as we can in that soil profile, the plant becomes a better plant. And they've done studies and they found that if we just water a little bit every day or every couple of days, our root system stays at a shallow area. But if we water a little bit and allow the roots to grow down and the area to dry out a little bit, we actually can develop a deeper root system. And they found if we can do 1 inch of soil, which will fill up 6 inches of good soil. So that's why you have to kind of dig around and know what's going on in your landscape and stuff. If we can fill up that 6 inches with the 1 inch of water, that the rest of the week when the top half of the lawn is dry, or the top half of the soil is drying out a little bit, the roots will actually go down mining for that water because the water's there. It won't go down into dry soil, but it'll go down looking and finding that water, and you'll actually train and develop your root system to be a better root system by this watering technique. And here's a really good example of how this was done. They watered once a week, and they have root systems down here topping out at 9 inches deep. And look how green and lush that lawn is in the back, directly related to how deep the root system and how thick and tenacious the lawn is on top. So this is the kind of root system we want to develop. And lawns will do that by this deep and infrequent water technique. So water in as much as you can that one day, and then let that water dry down and let those roots find it. But you can see if we have poor soils, the roots won't go down into it, and they will really struggle just trying to be an okay plant. They will never get to a point where they are a thriving plant like this. So dig around, see what your soil is. After watering, see how deep that water is penetrated down here to see if you need to water more to get it to drive it deeper down. And I recommend, if you can, one of the best horticultural tools, we use it every single day. It's called the soil probe. And you can actually just, drive it right into the ground, and then you get a soil sample that shows you how far the water went down, how deep your root systems are. It's very easy, simple, non-invasive. You don't have to use a shovel to dig things up and stuff like that. Really easy to do. There's a place up in Snohomish where I'm living up north in city of Snohomish, and there's Steuber's distributing up there, and you can get one pretty quick and easy. You want to buy a quality one, don't buy a cheap one, because they'll actually, some of them will bend in the soil if it's poor metal. So look them online or go up to Steuber's, great horticultural supply place, local place, and get a soil probe. And every time you water, put it down on the ground, see how far you went down, and you'll start seeing the roots going down deeper too. But a great tool to know that you're working, your work that you're doing is giving you the results you look for, okay? But lawns also have the ability, and they're the only plant this way, that if they don't have enough moisture in their root system, they go dormant, and they go into this, what we call a golden look for the lawn. And again, it's just based on the ability that there's no water in the root system. The plant's reacting by that, by dehydrating itself, and then waiting for water to come back. But it's also waiting for cooler temperatures, and it's waiting for shorter day length. So if your lawn starts going dormant right now, you can water from every day for 24 hours, and it will not come out of this dormancy because it's still not triggered by shorter days and cooler temperatures. So just know that those three things have to be satisfied for lawns to come back, but they always do. Most of the time, in fall time, if the lawns go dormant, once we get into cooler temperatures and a couple rains, shorter day length in September, the lawns will come back. So, but a couple of things about letting the lawn go dormant that we should be aware of is that having a healthier lawn going into this is better. So mow correctly, fertilize, do whatever you want to before going into that to make the lawn happy. So if it goes in this dormancy and comes out of it, it's a stronger plant coming out of that dormancy. And because the grass blades have no moisture in them, they're really in a very delicate situation. Moisture and water give grass blades tenacity and give them strength and give them resiliency because they have the moisture in their blades. So if we have no moisture there, the plants just have plant tissue. So if you're gonna have a lot of action on that from animals, kids, sports, or whatever it is, you can really do a lot of damage to the grass plants in this delicate state. So if you're gonna have a lot of activity on your lawns, it's really better to keep moisture and keep the lawn growing and not let it get into a major dormant state. And then even if we get extended periods of time and you have your lawn going dormant, once a month to give 1 inch of moisture out there just to keep some amount of moisture in that root system means that the plant will be stronger coming out of it in fall time. But just don't let it go dormant the whole time. And we see it all the time, every year. As soon as we start seeing warmer temperatures, there'll be areas of the lawn that'll start turning this dormant color, and it's a direct relationship with not having moisture in the root system. You can see from this lawn, it's going dormant up here, but down here where it's a little slope, and there's where more water will collect, it's greener, and under shade, the lawn's even greener because that moisture stays longer in those areas. So watch your lawn this year. If you start seeing it go dormant, know that the root system isn't very deep and there's not enough moisture in those areas. And again, in the Pacific Northwest, most lawns, 6 to 8 weeks in this dormant state, just fine. And that's been like in the past, for our summers, it usually starts getting warm like mid-July through August, and September starts cooling down. So that 6 to 8 week period usually has been a challenge. But if it goes longer than that, what we start seeing is the lawn actually will start dying off. It starts thinning out, and then even gets larger spots, enough for that weeds will move into those bare spots. And if this happens going into wintertime, that's when the moss will move in and completely take over the lawns. So you want to have your lawn thick. You want to have your lawn lush. You want to have it vigorous growing and having it fill in these spots so that that does not happen to the lawn if it goes into that dormant state for a long time. And our challenge has been, again, way back when we had about 6 to 8 weeks of dry weather, we're seeing now every year that it's changing. In July of 2015, we had 90 degree days and almost little or no moisture compared to what our average is coming out of the atmosphere. 2017, we went 55 days with no rain, which usually we have little intermittent rains come through once in a while, but we didn't those years. And then 2018 broke even more records, where May through August was the driest ever in the Pacific Northwest, setting more records of not enough moisture coming out to supply what plants really need to be happy. And a lot of plants will survive with limited moisture, but we want plants to thrive, and moisture gives them that. So I recommend watering. I recommend deep and infrequent watering to really try to make the plant the best that it can be, okay? Fourth step is improving lawns with aeration, overseed, and top dressings. And this is culturally, other than mowing correctly with a good sharp blade, is the best thing we can do for lawns. And aeration is just a big machine that runs over the lawn and pulls out little plugs. It reduces soil compaction and also opens up air spaces that the lawn can breathe again. And a lot of our lawns, because they get a lot of traffic and stuff like that, the soil becomes compacted underneath from just this basic traffic and what's going on top of it and stuff. So to alleviate that through this physical action, culturally is the best thing we can do for lawns. You want to get a hollow tined aerator. You can rent these at any places, like in Shoreline, I think there's Aurora Rents or something like that. There's a couple good size equipment rental companies over there, local places. You want to get a hollow tined one. Like I said, they're about twice the size of a lawnmower, so you need a pickup truck or something to put them in. They will not fit in a car. And you just roll it over the lawn over and over and over again, and it physically pulls out these little plugs and then lays them on top of the soil surface. And that's what we're looking for. We want to remove soil, put it on the soil surface so that the air get down there. Some aerators will be solid tine aerators, they call them. It's like a big piece of metal that just drives itself into the soil profile. But by doing that, it actually compacts the soil going to the sides while it's just trying to just re-establish that soil. So use a hollow tine so it pulls out a little plug, leaves it on top of the soil, you'll get better results. And they have done studies, even with heavy thatch layers. And most of the time, thatch layers are every lawn, let me start off this way. Every lawn atmosphere will have a small thatch layer. It's a transition zone from the roots and old crowns and this plant material just kind of dying off and recycling. But usually through poor mowing and poor fertilizing habits, we can get a thicker and thicker and thicker thatch layer where then after a while, roots are growing in the thatch and instead of the soil. So they found that even with a nasty thatch layer, by physically pounding through and getting holes driven in that soil, we can get air down there, we get oxygen down there, we get water down there, nutrients, and the grass responds really favorably to it. While this closes up, you get more roots, you get everything better, even with a bad thatch layer, just from an aeration. So I never recommend using a thatcher to remove thatch. If it's that bad, use an aerator, beat it up really good, you will see the results. And then while we have the soil open and we have the soil little plugs open, to throw seed down over the lawn to help thicken it up is really one of the easiest things you can do to have a better lawn. And it's called overseeding because it's literally just throwing seed over an existing lawn. Now, if you're not going to aerate, you want to rake the lawn a little bit to kind of scarify or scruff up that soil surface so you get better germination. But with an aeration, you usually get some pretty good scarification, so you don't have to do it at that time. Throw the seed down over the lawn, goes inside those little holes, starts growing in there while the holes are closing up and stuff like that, but it'll help thicken up the lawn. And again, a thick lawn is what we're going for in order to be able to have a successful lawn growing and stuff like that. So some of our clients throw out seed spring and fall, continually trying to thicken up the lawn. One of the best things we can do. The best time to do it is April through mid-June. So we still have time right now, probably another 4 or 5 weeks favorable to do an aeration, even seeding and stuff like that. So if you're still looking to do that, you still have some time to do that. The next best time is September through mid-October, so it's a shorter window. But once the fall rains come back and the soil gets rehydrated with water, so it's easy to pull plugs, a great time to do it. Now, if you're going to seed in springtime, you're going to have to water all through summer because the little seedlings will not go into a drought state. They'll just die off until they become established. It usually takes them about 1 year for establishment. So if you seed in September, October, you actually don't have to water that much, and they will establish themselves over the winter months, and then next year they'll be ready to go. So just know that in springtime, you will have to water to get the seedlings to stay okay through the entire season, okay? And always use quality seed, and always use seed that's grown for the Pacific Northwest And that means going again to a good garden store where they'll set you up with the right seed. And it's usually a blend of perennial ryegrasses and fine fescues. So there's different types of perennial ryes, different fine fescues, but they grow them together where there'll be 2 or 3 different kind of perennial ryes, 2 or 3 different kind of fescues. In a blend, you can't tell the grass plants apart when they grow, but because they're different strengths of each one, some of them grow well in shadier conditions, some grow in hotter conditions, some grow on slopey areas. So really, you want to get a blend. And again, go to a good nursery, because at the box stores, they'll sell you a seed that they sell all over the country, and it'll have seeds in there that don't do well in the Pacific Northwest. So quality seed, perennial ryegrasses and fine fescues in a blend. It'll probably say like sun and shade like this one does, or it'll say Northwest blend, but that's what you want to buy, okay? And then really the best thing you can do for all of that, open up that soil profile, get some seed out there, and then if you can fill in those holes now with quality compost, you are getting organic matter directly down into your soil profile, and you will see the results usually within a couple weeks of your lawn exploding in front of you. It's pretty amazing by getting organic matter down into it. Pretty easy to do, just spread out the product, the compost, on the lawn and then rake it back and forth a couple different directions. You do not want to use a lot of product. It only takes about a 1/4 inch of compost to fill in those holes and just kind of cover up that soil surface and those seeds. So it doesn't need to be where you're mulching it or putting large amounts down on it. You actually still want to see grass blades after you put this down. And then once you do that first watering, you'll really see the lawn green, but it'll look better just because of having this compost. So again, small amount, 1/4 inch, raking it back and forth. You definitely want to see grass plants still like this when you're done with your top dressing, okay? And then for some people, if they have really soggy soils, or there's product or soils that really dry out quickly, there's a product we've been using now for a little while called Access. It's Diatomaceous Earth. It's a naturally mined product, but it's a soil amendment that we can aerate, apply this on top to fill in those holes, and then those holes don't close in on each other and just become closed up again. They actually keep that soil structure open for more water movement through the soil, more water holding capacity, more air movement. So a really nice product to kind of just open up our heavy clay soils. But we've been really happy with the results from this Access Diatomaceous Earth. So something to kind of look for if you want to improve the soil structure on your plants too. Okay, and then really, if you're doing all these things up here, you should have little or no problems with your lawn. But sometimes if there are, then people will go to pesticides, and that's why we really need to always be considerate about any other products we're putting out there and think twice before using pesticides. And just so that we're all kind of the same page, when I say pesticides, in horticulture, the umbrella of pesticides includes fungicides to kill funguses, miticides to kill mites, insecticides to kill insects, mammaliicides to kill little furry creatures, molluscicides to kill slugs and snails, and then herbicides to kill plants. And so an herbicide is a pesticide under that pesticide umbrella, but there's a lot of killers in horticulture that's sold to kill all these different organisms that we really have to be careful about. And so for lawn care, really for pesticides is that, again, no more weed and feed product, because that's an herbicide with a fertilizer put everywhere, and this herbicide's ending up in all of our waterways. And really, any poisons or toxins are damaging the beneficial organisms in our soil, so we don't want to use them, because we really make our soils worse by using those products. We don't make the situation better, and then we're finding they're in all these rivers, lakes, waterways, everywhere. So we just minimize those products or eliminate those products, so we don't have to worry what's happening downstream. And again, number 3 here, a healthy lawn, a thick, tenacious, vigorous growing lawn is our #1 weed control, because we're using Mother Nature to compete against Mother Nature. So it's the best thing to do. And then for any grass plant, because it's only being grown at 3 inches, there's going to be other plants wanting to be with that plant, because that's how Mother Nature works. It's communities, not just a monoculture of one plant. So we almost have to accept some other types of plants growing there once in a while, or we'll drive ourselves crazy about having other plants in there. So it really becomes a tolerance level too. So there's 2 ways to get rid of weeds in lawns. One is pulling them by hand, what I recommend for all the dandelions, recommend for plantain and stuff like that. And then spot spraying tougher weeds, which would be our creepers, which would be clover or buttercup, if people didn't like those. But let me talk about dandelions first. or taprooted ones. And really, if you have dandelions in your soil, and dandelions are everywhere, right? I mean, they're everywhere, but they are a sign of compacted soils, because that big root is supposed to go down into tough soils, break up those soils so that plants that grow there afterwards have better soils to grow in. And another thing that's known about dandelions is that when they die off, they put calcium into the soil. So it's a sign that you need to put lime down on your soil too when you have a lot of dandelions. So there's signs of compacted soils, and there's signs of lack of calcium. So aerate your soils, put down some calcium, have a thicker, better lawn, and you'll have less dandelions, not because they're it's killing them off or anything, but it's just because we're out competing them as much as possible. And then clover has really got a bad rap, and I like clover. It's a nitrogen fixer. That means that it brings nitrogen from the atmosphere, brings it down into the soil, and then it shares it with all of its friends. So as a legume, as a nitrogen fixer, it's a phenomenal plant for just making plants around it better. And it was sold in lawn mixtures way, way back when, before the herbicide companies tried to convince people that any broadleaf plant in a lawn was a bad plant, and only grass plants could be in there and stuff. But really, clover is a good plant. In a lot of instances, the lawn will stay greener. It'll need less water. It won't go into a dormant period because it likes growing with lawn, and grass plants like growing with clover. So another thing that was told is that if you have clover, you have flowers. Flowers bring bees. Bees, if you get stung, can be harmful and stuff. But right now, folks, the bees are in big trouble, and we need to take care of the bees. And so to plant clover in our lawns and have that where bees have another source of nectar and stuff like that is really a great environmental thing to do. If you don't like the flowers, I recommend mowing a little more often, and it really cuts off those flowers during its flowering period here in springtime. Once we get past it, you don't have to worry about the flowers much, but it might just be a little bit more often mowing to keep the flowers down. But if you want to get rid of clover, unfortunately, the only thing you can do is use a traditional herbicide to spray for it, because you can't pull it or it'll send out energy into its root system to grow even more because it thinks it's under attack. So you have to be very careful with any products. Also realize that we don't have crabgrass up here. There's lots of stores, big box stores that sell crabgrass killer, but we do not have crabgrass. We do have, though, some invasive, or what we call weed grasses, okay? And they're just grasses that don't grow the same way as our desirable ones. Like this little poa annual gets these little teeny seed heads on it. You'll see your lawn almost look like it has a little dusting of snow on it, and that's because this plant is going to flower or seed during its life cycle. And then you see some of these grasses like here that grow along the soil surface instead of being a bunch grass. Start looking at all the edges of native areas right now, or natural areas, or ditches or anything like that. A bunch of grasses now are starting to go to seed, and then they get blown all over the place, and that's where all these grasses come from. So they're just everywhere all the time, but when they get in our lawns, they look differently, and they usually have a different color, and they become undesirable. But there's nothing you can do to kill them that won't kill the desirable plants, so it almost becomes a tolerance level if you get some of these in there, okay? Note too that mushrooms grow in our lawns. They grow everywhere in the Pacific Northwest. We just came out of our mushroom growing season like March and April, when things start warming up, and then we'll see another surge again in fall time. Mushrooms in lawns are just a sign of organic matter being broken down, which is a good sign. We want to see organic matter being broken down. For most people, you can either just pull them off and put them in the yard waste, or mow over them and stuff like that, but it'll just be a short period of time that you see these lawn mushrooms. But they're not harmful to the lawn. Don't eat them or anything like that, but there's nothing that warrants having to use something to try to kill these things or get rid of them. It's just a natural thing that'll go away once it starts warming up, okay? And what we're seeing too is that the off-target problems with using these pesticides were the biggest challenges. Off-target can mean waterways, off-target can mean pets or family. And there was a Clearview up in Snohomish where this veterinarian put pets don't mix well with lawn care products. And when I talked to him, he said that he saw dogs and cats coming in with lesions, fur falling out, rashes and stuff like that, and he thought it was a direct correlation to products being put on lawns, and these animals going out there and just laying in it and rolling around in it and licking themselves and stuff like that, and having problems when we're trying to do one thing to our lawn and seeing problems come about it. So we really want to be smart with any products that we're using. there's a product, a publication, Grow Smart, Grow Safe, that was really good for years, that had all these fantastic charts inside of them about what you should think about before using any lawn care product or garden product. It doesn't matter if you're growing roses or fruits or vegetables. Any pesticides, any poisons or toxins need to be thought out and really used correctly. So now you can go to the website, Grow Smart, Grow Safe, put any product you want to use over here, and it'll give you all the information you need to be able to use the product correctly, or even make a decision on whether you want to use that product because it might have some off-target problems that aren't worth it for you. So really do research, make sure you're using any of these products correctly. And if you're going to use any herbicides, if you're going to use any of the weed killers, they really need to be a thorough, thought-out process. It's always a last resort. If you have a bunch of weeds in your lawn, you want to kill the weeds. If you're not going to thicken up your lawn or start growing it correctly and stuff like that, the weeds are going to come back quickly because they have spots to grow in. Number one key is to start working on the health of the soil and your plant material, so that if you start getting rid of weeds, the lawn moves into those areas, okay? So it's always a last resort. They're never a first resort. You always select the proper product for the job, because there's non-selectives and selectives, there's post-emergence and pre-emergence. There's a ton of different ways that chemicals kill plants, so you have to really understand what you're using. And then once you get that product, you have to read the label, and then again, read the label, so you really understand how to be successful or get the best results with the minimal risks from using those products. They'll probably tell you to wear PPE. We hear a lot about PPE nowadays for the medical, but for gardening, PPE might be rubber boots, long pants, long sleeves, rubber gloves, face mask, eye protection, whatever you can do when you're using these products. When you're using these products, you are really at the most risk at that time when you're mixing and putting them down. So you really have to take care of yourself and make sure that you're going to be okay by using these products. So PPE is huge. Even proper timing is major, because you don't want to put down an herbicide right before a rainstorm, or you're going to see nothing but problems and not get the results you're wanting. So you have to be really good. And then spray with care. Just be very careful how we're using these. Quick story. I have some friends that have a home in Seattle, and they also have a home in Winthrop. And in Winthrop, they have noxious weeds that by law they have to stay on top of. So they use glyphosate over there for that, which Roundup is the brand name most commonly used. But it's a non-selective post-emergent herbicide. So the husband said, hey, I got that weed killer over there. I want to use it on the dandelions in my lawn over here. And my friend said, well, you know, that's a post-emergent. It kills everything, non-selective. It means it doesn't matter what the plant material is. If it gets on it, it's killing it. It doesn't say good plant, bad plant. It says kill plant. And he says, I'm really good at target practice. And she said, so she just relented and let him do it. He went over there, got some of the product, came back over and sprayed his lawn. And this is what he did to his lawn by trying to kill the dandelions with the wrong herbicide. And folks, this is, visually, you see this and you go, something's not right there. Something really is not right. That is not the way it's supposed to look. And that's when we see this, we can make that correlation. The challenge is with a lot of these products, we don't see a visual problem with it. We don't see those 23 different pesticides in our rivers and waterways and stuff like that, because we don't see them visually, but they're there. So we really have to be careful with all these products, because this is something you're saying, oh my gosh, there's a big problem. Someone really screwed up. When we don't see the visual part, we see the problems from it still. So we have to be very careful, okay? If you have any pesticides you want to get rid of, because they're considered hazardous waste, if you go down to any garden store and you buy one of these pesticides, it's not just garbage, it's not just something you can just toss away in the regular garbage. It's hazardous waste. It needs to be treated that way. So any of these products can be taken to the household hazardous waste facility, and they have, in Shoreline, you guys have the one down on Stone Avenue. Now, just note too, at the bottom there, it says it's closed right now because of the virus situation, but usually it's open most times. So just wait it out. Whenever they open up, you can take it to them. Any pesticide has to be in its original container, so you can't bring whatever you had in an old tin cup or something like that and tell them you think you know what it is. They really have to know what the products are, what's in there, so they can dispose of them correctly. So please, all original containers only. Okay, so let me finish up here with probably two of the biggest pests that we deal with, that we get more complaints about than anything else in our lawn areas, is moss and moles. Okay, so let me talk about moss first, and I'll talk about why we have it, if you want to get rid of it, how you treat it, and then what you're going to have to do after taking care of that treatment of the moss. And then really for moss, because of the Pacific Northwest, tolerance should be one of the things we need to consider, okay? And the reason that we have moss in everywhere around here is that we live in a rainforest, okay? So we've taken away most of the trees around here, but if you go over to the whole rainforest, Olympic rainforest or Forks over there, you'll see forests like this. Everything's lush and green, and a lot of it is green because of moss. Moss is everywhere. They've discovered like over almost 300 different kinds of moss in the Pacific Northwest, and it's everywhere because it's Mother Nature's giant sponge where we get so much rain coming out of the sky, it soaks up all that moisture and then slowly releases it to the environment over time so that we don't get huge damage environmentally from having heavy rains and stuff. So as a plant that protects the environment, moss is pretty phenomenal in the Pacific Northwest. And it will grow anywhere that other plants aren't successful because it has to cover up soil. That is moss's job, is to cover soil, cover plant material so that it can soak up moisture. So anywhere we have a lot of shade, like on the left-hand side there, any heavy slopes that plant material doesn't grow very well, moss will become the dominant plant in those areas. So if you have shady areas, you have slopey areas, and you're trying to grow lawn in those areas, it probably is not going to be successful. And over time, moss comes back and comes back and comes back. So for lawn to be happy, it needs sunshine, it needs open space, it needs good drainage. And if we don't have some of those conditions, then you might be fighting a losing battle with moss in those areas, okay? Because usually what happens is that we come after, 3 or 4 months out of the house, and we think that, oh, I got a little bit of moss in my lawn. And then you go, whoops, a little too fast. And then you go, oh, I got a little bit of grass, and I think I have more moss. And then you go, oh my gosh, I have little bits of lawn in my lawn, and everything else is moss, because that's what moss will do by taking over when the lawn's not healthy or happy or in the right place. Moss becomes the dominant plant. So now you're telling me you want to get rid of it. Maybe not telling me that, but most people, they don't like it. They do want to get rid of it. And there's products that have been sold that try to make you think it's quick and easy to get the moss. Like this one right here where it says kills lawn moss quickly right here. That doesn't. These guys are liars because nothing kills moss in these products. Most of these products are made from iron or ferrous sulfate. And what this iron does, and it's a heavy metal, is that it's such a high concentrate of salt that it sucks all the moisture out of the moss and turns it black. And that's what most people see when they apply these products, is that in a short period of time, once there's the product starts doing its thing, then the moss turns black. It's not killing the moss. What it's doing is it's really damaging the moss by sucking the moisture out of the tissue of the moss and just leaving it raw, so it's just black like that. But it's not killing it, so it's really damaging it. So if you don't physically remove the moss at that point when it's in that weakened state, it will come back. And because this moss control product is an iron and a heavy metal, it actually acidifies the soil, which means that moss is going to be more of a tenacious critter in that area because it's taking the pH down below where moss likes it, but not keeping it in a range that lawn likes it. So for people who put down moss controls every year, they're actually acidifying their soil every year to keep the moss coming back. It's a nasty cycle. So you want to do it once, do it right, and then build the health of the soil in the lawn so you don't have to worry about mosses being that much of a problem. So you use one of these products and you turn it black. When it's in that weakened state, you have to physically remove it. If it's small enough areas or like edges, you probably could use a little lawn rake, but if it's in larger spaces, you want to get this machine called a lawn comb. Same place you rent an aerator, you can get this machine. It has all of these little metal tines down here that go round and round and round at tremendous speeds. And then, excuse me, has this handle back here that allows you to, excuse me, allows you to put that deck right on the soil surface so it literally scrapes the moss off of the soil surface, and that's what you want to do. You just don't want to scrape off the dead parts where it's weakened because the moss is still down below. You want to scrape it off of that soil surface. So if you have a lot of moss, you're probably not going to realize how much moss you really had, because as this machine goes over that area, it pulls all the moss and puts it behind you. That physically then you have to remove all those big tufts of moss, and you might have lots and lots of moss then that I recommend just taking to disposal station or put in your yard waste and stuff like that. But it might be a lot of material coming off of the lawn. And then once you've done it and you removed all this moss after raking, you're going to see huge bare spots all over the place because that's where the moss was dominant. So if you don't have grass growing in those spaces pretty quick, moss or weeds are going to come back. So after you remove the moss, you're going to have to aerate to open up that soil profile, get that lawn to breathe. You're going to have to put down good seed and probably put it down in probably twice the amount that you would put down just for an overseeding. And I don't think I talked about that, but for overseeding, it's usually 4 to 5 pounds per 1,000 square feet per application. If you're going to do a lawn renovation like this, it might be 8 to 10 pounds per 1,000 square feet, but you want to put plenty of seed down there to thicken up those areas. And then you're going to have to cover up all those bare areas because the seed has to be protected. With an overseeding, the existing grass almost protects those new seedlings from drying out. But if you have big bare spots and you don't cover them up, those seeds will germinate and then they'll die off without having enough moisture. So you want to cover them up with a small layer of compost again to be able to make sure that you protect those new seedlings. Then keep the moisture to it till it gets itself established, okay? And then afterwards, you're going to have to mow correctly, you're going to have to fertilize correctly, you're going to have to water correctly, you're going to have to aerate, overseed, and top dress on a regular, frequent basis to keep the lawn happy and moving, or the moss will come back in some of those areas. Or sometimes it's just a tolerance level. And we have some clients that under big cedar trees, fir trees, hemlocks, under roadies and stuff, no longer growing grass because it's not happy there, letting the moss take over and then doing something like this, some shrunken heads, maybe some hellebores or bleeding hearts. I love sword ferns in these environments, maidenhair ferns, thickening up with a natural environment like we do in a forest, and it really becomes a beautiful moss garden, which is a lot easier care than trying to grow a lawn where it's not going to be successful. And realize too that for every person who's unhappy with moss growing in their lawn, there's somebody over in Asia who's really upset that they have grass plants growing in their moss gardens, okay? So it's just kind of how you look at things. And up here, moss is a tenacious critter in the environment. But it's also a really big benefit too. Not only does it suck up the moisture in the forest, but I found this on the internet where it's a bath mat made from different kind of mosses where you never have to wash another bath mat. And every time you come out of the shower, your feet get a little reflexology, you get a little foot rub, which makes your day better. So mosses can be good too. And really the ultimate intolerance is just being okay with how Mother Nature works in the Pacific Northwest. You see this gentleman is more than being Zen, but just notice too that he was completely naked when he went out there, and so all the shady spots are now growing moss. Okay, finish up here a little bit about moles. We have 2 up here that are tenacious, the Townsend and the Pacific. Very, very, what do I want to say here? They're very good at what they do, which is turning soils over. In the Pacific Northwest, these guys go through soils and they bring soils to the top and bring it down, and they're just constantly amending soils and opening up air channels and water channels. So really, they're good critters for how Mother Nature's soil works around here. In good soils, they can dig 15 feet per hour, which means it's equivalent of like a 150-pound person moving 3,200 pounds, so, or 4,800 pounds, excuse me. So they are just tenacious what they do, and they can make a lot of mole holes in a short period of time. You're probably going to see, if you haven't already, probably see more activity in spring, and you see more in fall just because of temperatures, and especially in spring because now there's love in the air, and so they're really kind of going to town. They will patrol their tunnels looking for worms and grubs, so they don't kill lawn plants by chewing roots or anything like that, which some people have thought. But what they do is by their tunneling and by moving soil around, they unearth the roots, and so the roots dry out and the lawn will die off that way. But they're not chewing roots. They actually dig a tunnel. They let critters, you know, grubs and earthworms fall into the tunnel, and then they come back and they just eat those guys while they're patrolling and stuff like that. So if you have soggy soils, they'll work more near the surface, and in drier weather in our summers, they actually will go down deeper looking for moisture in cooler areas. But they drive us crazy. They can do a lot of damage in a short period of time when we think that we've had the lawn looking pretty good. And I actually found this on the internet too, lots of stuff on the internet. But these are mole slippers that maybe now you want to attract moles to be able to make Christmas presents for your friends instead of just trying to get rid of these little guys. A couple products that have been pretty successful. Some people think the one on the left there, there's some of these things that make little emitting sounds like beeps. That's supposed to be annoying to them and they don't like it. It's supposed to drive them away. Some clients think it works. Some clients do not like how it works. They even have this Mole Max, which is like a castor bean oil that's put on the soil and it's supposed to make it taste terrible. Some people say it works, some people don't say it works, so kind of off and off. The two things that have been most successful in my experience, first one is coyote urine, and you really don't have to have coyote urine, but what they found is that if it's a predator for moles, if there's urination going on there, then the moles are going to be moving away because they want to get away from the predators. But they did some more studies and found that male coyotes were even more tenacious for moving moles out of there, and did some more studies and found that any male mammal predator can be a mole control. So are there any male mammal predators in the audience tonight? They have found that you can go out and just urinate on mole holes as a male and it will drive moles away. So I don't know too many guys who would not like to drink a couple beers and then go out and help the neighborhood with mole control. But I would always recommend backyard mole control because front yard can get you in trouble with the cops, okay? And then really hardware cloth is pretty, I got a little piece right here just so people can recognize. It's like a really heavy duty chicken wire type material you can buy at any hardware store. And they put this on buildings in order to be able to put on the fake rocks and bricks and stuff like that on the sides. But it's really heavy duty that if you unroll it and put it into like an L shape, you can dig a trench in your yard, knowing where the moles are moving in and out of that property. And if you dig a trench between you and them, put this in that trench, fill it in so it's completely buried, then the moles will hit that fencing, think it's a rock, try to go underneath it, hit it again, and then they'll just move back from where they came from because they want to work in good soils and stuff. So as a physical barrier, you're 100% control by using hardware cloth. But a lot of work from having to dig a trench and then roll this out and fill it all in. Sometimes to just try option number one, get it, option number one might be the way to try it first before having to go to the hardware cloth. Or my house, I rake them down. I throw that soil around just so it's kind of dispersed. If you kind of shovel up this little pancake type thing that's underneath, you'll find a small hole right there where they're doing all their digging. So if you just shovel that up and put it and rake it around, and then I throw a little seed down there, a lot of times after, you won't even know that they're doing their damage. But if you tamp down all this soil, then you have big spots that the lawn's not going to be growing back from, and it drives you even crazier, okay? Now, a lot of people think about trapping moles, which is an option, but you kind of have to know what you're doing. If you're thinking that that's the option you want to do, there's some fantastic information in this book, Living with Wildlife in the Pacific Northwest by Russell Link. Really good. Not only talks about moles, it talks about mountain beavers, talks about deer, talks about rabbits, but any furry creatures, he can give you some good options on how to try to help deter them, okay? And then really the last one again is just rethinking the lawn if the lawn is not successful when we're trying to do all these other things to it, because sometimes it's just not the right plant in the right place for long-term success. And I live up in Lake Stevens, and I was driving up there one day and I actually saw the smoke coming from this guy's yard, and then when you back off a little bit, it's his roof, and he grew lawn on top of his roof in order to be able to have a place that he could watch the fireworks, watch the boats go by and stuff like that. You can see it's a natural lawn. There's some dandelions and clover and some other plants growing in there, so it's a natural lawn, but really a successful lawn for him for his functionality and stuff. But I live in a development, or I don't live in a development, right outside the, where I live, there's a development that they just built like 2 years ago, and they put chunks of lawn all along the streets going up, like 1.5 by 4 feet of just turf that I don't understand. What's the point of putting turf out there that has to be mowed, watered, fertilized, aerated, limed, all this stuff? It's like, why would people do that? They probably should have just kept concrete right there instead of now making someone's job to try to take care of a little chunk like that. And if the lawn's not successful, think of some other things to do. We had a client in Bellevue where they just had this little thing of turf over here that really they're just, again, it was just keeping something green. They said, get rid of it. We removed it, built some planter beds, built so they could grow vegetables, and then the kids were out in the yard picking vegetables and stuff like that. So really, that's what it's about, is just being thoughtful about how areas that could be turned into other successful things like gardens or food would be the best long-term solution. I have some photos here that of my place where we're at 12:15 already, so I'm going to turn it back over to Cameron, and then we will go through some questions, and then try to help you out any way we can with your lawn.
Awesome, thanks, Lad. So yeah, we have a handful of questions here. So I'll start at the top with some that got the most votes, and we'll see how much we have time for. So
Cool.
Lauren is asking, she says, my lawn is 75% moss. I'm in a valley. The rest is grass and weeds. What will what you suggest work, or do I need to remove the moss? I think she was talking about aeration, overseeding.
Yeah, you're gonna have to, if you got that much, you'll have to remove the moss if you want to have grass growing there, because now 75%, that means moss is the dominant plant. So there's a couple options. You can do what I talked about, like, just removing it all with a thatcher or something like that. Or if it's that much and you have weeds in those other areas, it might be easier. There's a machine called a sod cutter that just cuts right underneath that soil profile. You can roll it up and get rid of it all. Literally in a couple hours, you would have all that removed. Now you have an open canvas to be able to start over. If you're going to go to that extreme, I would recommend put some compost there and amend it in there, get those soils better before putting a new lawn on top of it. But sometimes that's an easier job than trying to do all that renovation work for a lawn that's going to have a lot of troubles. You're almost rototilling at that point anyways when you got that much moss.
Cool, thanks. And then we have two questions, it looks like, about what kind of compost to use for top dressing, or is there a particular compost you'd recommend to apply to a lawn after aeration and overseeding that would be easy to apply to 3,000 square feet?
For compost, really my number one recommendation is Cedar Grove compost. They take all the yard waste materials from all of our, those containers that we put out the curb, and then they have some facilities where they have some pretty phenomenal composting abilities where they aerify. They get the temperatures up to 180 degrees to kill off any disease organisms or insect eggs or weed seeds or anything like that, and really produce a pretty quality product that's easy to apply. I know I saw, I haven't been out this year because of what's going on, but the last couple of years at Fred Meyer, they had the Cedar Grove lawn top dressing bags. That's a really nice fine compost that was so easy to apply that it was like it was the best thing to be able to use. But any Cedar Grove compost is good, but this lawn top dressing finer product was really, really easy to apply. But Cedar Grove compost, they're all over the place. But Fred Meyer had it in bags. Sometimes that's easier for people to apply it.
Cool, thank you. Okay, next one is backyard is full of dandelions, which is the dog's yard. To try and cut them down, should I pull them all and then ?
Move? Is that what you're thinking? If you're going to pull any dandelions, I recommend having seed and a little bit of compost with you at the time, because you're going to see like there's going to be a pretty good little space, not a dinner plate, but a sandwich plate size area that's going to be bare. You want to fill that in with some seed and compost to start growing lawn there, or something else will be growing there pretty quick. So pulling them is satisfying, but you'll have some pretty good areas that you want to reseed pretty quick. Or move.
Or I know it's an acquired taste, but dandelion green salad.
Yeah, if you go to a French restaurant, you'll be amazed how much they're charging for dandelion greens. You know what I mean? You probably think you might have a couple $1,000s worth of salad fixings in your yard. Just have to wait for the restaurant to open back up.
I guess not if it's the dog's yard, though.
Yeah, not if they're the correct. You do not want to tell them how you're taking care of your organic gardening.
Yeah. So that leads us to the next question, which is about urine. Does bunny urine or poop kill off the lawn? And I would add dog urine to that question separately.
Well, and good one. A lot of people will ask us, we'll see yellow spots in the lawn, and it's from usually female dog urine, and it's a high salt, right? So when the urine goes out there, it's almost like doing what the iron does to the moss. It sucks all the moisture out of that grass blade and turns it yellow. So for most people, if you just heavily water those areas and flush it out, you'll see over a short period of time that those lawns will actually start turning green, and maybe greener than other areas of the lawn, because now enough salts have been washed out that the nitrogen that's been left in there, the plants start really responding to. So you'll start seeing a bunch of green spots all over the lawn. So for dog urine, it's heavy flushing in order to get rid of that. I've never seen problems with rabbit urine or poops, usually because they don't do it in big enough piles and stuff like that to kind of just have that salt concentration. So we have lots of clients who just let their bunnies run wild out on the natural lawn, and I've never seen problems from that.
Right, and I'm not an expert on this, but since bunnies are herbivores, right, it would theoretically, you could maybe even make your own compost out of it or something.
I think you can with rabbit
Yeah.
food would be just fine for doing that. Yeah.
Safer,
And
yeah.
really, you know, it's like just fertilizing the lawn while they're moving along, right? They're just eating from the front and fertilizing out the back. So
Right.
maybe this person's onto something, and we'll just start selling bunnies for people's lawns to fertilize.
But that is a difference between cats and dogs.
Correct. Yeah, cats and dogs are solid waste. They just need to be removed. Yep.
Okay, thanks. And there's another bunny question. What kind of damage can bunnies do? Shall we just learn to live with them, or is there cause for concern?
They don't do like damage that for me would be very concerning. Now, sometimes they'll dig a little bit and have ruts in the lawn, or like, you know, spots in the lawn that can be tripping hazards or something when the lawn's growing on it. I found that bunnies seem to be more of a challenge for like vegetable beds and stuff when they get in there. They can do, you know, when they go in there and ravage that, there's big problems. But I've never seen it where rabbits are a major pest for lawns.
Right.
Just you want to have them out of the way when you're mowing. That could be a big problem.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, last question for Katie. What are the weeds that put prickers in our bare skin when we walk on our lawn? How to get rid of those?
There's a couple. There's the one like a thistle that we see a lot of in most lawns, and that's probably one of the nastiest. I think in my photo of like plants that move into lawns, when I showed the moss or the bare spots, I think that was the thistle. That's probably the number one. Good pair of gloves, and then digging it up and popping it. It's a deep-rooted system. It's a deep taproot, so they are easy to dig taproot. What I recommend is cleaning out right at the base where it's coming out of the soil. There's no thorns right there. So you can grab onto it down there and then be able to pop it out pretty easily, but you never just want to grab it where the thistles are at and stuff like that. But they are, that's a nasty weed. You definitely want to get rid of it as much as possible, but easy to pull.
Gotcha. Awesome. So that's all of our questions, unless anybody has anything else. Yeah, just wanted to thank you all for coming and say that.
Thank you.
I will be sending a follow-up email with a bunch of the links that Lad mentioned, and I will be doing the drawing for the raffle for the Grandpa's Weeders. Just a huge virtual round of applause for Lad. Thanks for spending the morning with us, and Lad, appreciate the presentation and your time.
Thanks again for everything, Cameron. You have a great day. Everybody stay safe and healthy, okay? And play in your yards. Great place to be right now. Have a wonderful day.
Is. All right.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody. Bye.